So just shout at me if you have a question or something. Let's go. All right. I've got 26 slides, so I'm going to try to make it through them all without keeping you guys here for forever. But yeah, just hop in if you have any questions or if you have any thoughts or anything as we go through this. All right. So just starting off with a disclaimer, I'm not an expert. I just read a book and really loved it and found that it really resonated with me. So today I'm just sharing with you what I've learned and feel really passionate about, and to give you guys just kind of like a little background on what got me into it. It was a little bit of Anna Woods, actually, but I struggle with depression, and as kind of like a side effect of my depression, I tend to overeat emotionally sometimes, majority of the time, or just to kind of like distract myself from what I'm feeling. But I find it really hard to know when to stop eating, so I overeat a lot. And I found it really hard to, while I was struggling with my depression, to stick to a diet. And so I would kind of like try to go pursue a diet, and I would struggle with it. I'd like break a rule in the diet or something. And then I would feel really bad about myself and be like, why can't you do this? But, why can't you just discipline yourself more, have more willpower? If you just really focus, and you can just do it. And so I'd give it another shot. And then when I wasn't successful again, then I'd feel like horrible and, like just kind of a lot of internal negative self-talk. And I would go back, and that would feed into my depression. So it was kind of like a vicious cycle for me. And so when I was reading this book, it kind of just gave me a real freeing feeling from the pressures of dieting and a lot of the pressures that I put on myself for dieting, but also like that I felt like society and stuff were putting on me to make sure that I dieted and stuff. So anyways, just a little background on how I got into it. I'm not perfect intuitive eater. I have a lot to figure out, but I have learned quite a bit. I read this book probably about a year ago. Anyways, so it is strongly anti-diet. So that's okay if it's not for you. I'm not saying this is the only way. I'm just saying this is what I feel like works for me. And, I also thought quarantine time might be a good time to explore this as we're grieving the way our life was before, and maybe having a harder time sticking to certain routines that we were doing before COVID-19 and quarantining. So this might be a good time for you to kind of explore this option, this way of eating. It is a journey, so just be patient with yourself. We'll talk more about that later. But it takes a long time to figure out. So a lot of times it takes about, longer than you think, just because of however many years that you've been fed diet culture. And I think the majority of us have been fed diet culture, since we were old enough to watch TV and look at magazine ads and go to the store and see, all sorts of like dieting things. So it's going to take a long time before you can kind of get out of that mindset. And, mold this into what works for you. It doesn't have to be just one way. And I think that there are some gray areas in this intuitive eating for me, which I'll kind of hit on a few of those later. So, yeah, just know that if this seems kind of like extremely one way or the other, just know, like, keep an open mind, and just see it maybe as a new way to think about things, a new perspective. All right. So this is the book that I read. It was created by Evelyn Tribole, I'm not sure how you say her name. She actually created intuitive eating in the 60s, but at that time, it was kind of like mocked and made fun of because it just was seen as like too hippy dippy, and like the diet industry was like really extreme at that time. So they, for whatever reason, they just kind of rebuked it and didn't take off at that time. But she rewrote it again in the 90s with this Elise lady, and it's been kind of evolving since then. So she releases versions of this book every so often where she kind of updates things as like science and studies discover more stuff. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is from this book. So, and what I'm giving today is an overview. So I highly recommend that you get the book and read it so you can get all the yummy in-between details that I won't have time to go into today. There's a lot of like stats and studies and scientific basing to what's stated in this book. So I really enjoyed that too. There's a link to it in the resources slide, and I think it's like 20 or 30 bucks on Amazon. And they have an audio version of it too, which I really liked. But the book itself has like quizzes and worksheets and stuff for you to fill out and graphs and things for you to look at. So, yeah. Okay. What is intuitive eating? Intuitive eating is an approach developed to help people heal from the side effects of chronic eating. It's a nutrition philosophy based on becoming more attuned to the body's natural hunger signals. And an intuitive eater is defined as a person who makes food choices without experiencing guilt or an ethical dilemma, honors hunger, respects fullness, and enjoys the pleasure of eating. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it'll kind of become more clear. Like these are just general statements about it, but as we go through the rest, it'll be more crystallized as to what an intuitive eater is. So becoming an intuitive eater, like I said, it takes time, and it usually depends on how long you've been dieting.
Kate, is there a way to make one slide bigger versus the two smaller slides?
Oh, I didn't know you could see the.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can see both.
let me try. I'll just do it in regular.
Just because it's a little hard. Yeah, that's
That
way
looks
better.
good. Yeah.
Much better.
Let me see. Now I can't see my notes.
You can open, I think you can share this one and then open it up in another screen. You'll just have to like coordinate the changes, slide changes.
I don't know how to do that. So I'll just go from here and then I'll open it up if I need to reference any notes.
Okay.
But yeah, so becoming an intuitive eater, they say, the book says that there's 5 stages that you kind of go through to becoming an intuitive eater. And the first one is hitting diet bottom, where most people start. And this is where I started. You're attempting to lose weight long term, and it's failed. So not like short term weight loss, but long term. You're tired of valuing each day based on a scale. You think and worry about food all the time. You have a lot of restrictive food talk, like I had 2 cookies, I was really bad today. You have a negative body image, and you're just unhappy eating and living the way that you are, and you're ready for a change. Some of that may sound really cheesy, but I feel like that actually happens to a lot of people more than you think. And I was definitely at this place whenever I got into intuitive eating. So the second stage is like exploration. It's like hyper conscious awareness of what you're eating, learning in pursuit of pleasure of food. You have to reacquaint yourself with your intuitive signals. You start to make peace with food, and you honor your hunger. And we'll dig into some more of like what those mean in some of the other slides here. The third stage is crystallization. So your work from your previous stage begins to crystallize or become clear, and you feel like you have solid behavior change. Thoughts are no longer food obsessive, and you have a greater sense of trust with yourself with food. Fourth stage is the intuitive eater awakens. The work you've been doing in the previous stages culminates in a comfortable, free-flowing eating style. You start to choose healthier foods because you want to, not because you have to or feel like you should. Food and self-talk become more positive. And then the final stage is you treasure the pleasure, which is super cheesy, I know. But you just are treasuring the food that you eat and really taking pleasure in the satiety of the foods that you're eating. You trust your body's intuitive abilities to know what to feed it. And then your weight will settle into what is natural for you. And you go back to eating like when you were an infant or a toddler. Any questions? Okay. So there's 10 principles of intuitive eating, and we're going to go through these. Some I'm going to focus a little bit more time on, and others we're just going to kind of go through because it's just kind of common sense, and it makes, or for me at least, it's a little bit more common sense. But the 10 steps are: reject the diet mentality, honor your hunger, make peace with food, challenge the food police, feel your fullness, discover the satisfaction factor, cope with your emotions without using food, respect your body, exercise, and honor your health with gentle nutrition. So the first, reject the diet mentality. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this because I feel like that this is something that I really struggled with, and most people are going to struggle with and have some sort of strong feeling about. But rejecting the diet mentality is deciding not to ever diet again. You accept the fact that diets are futile. Rebel against the $20+ billion diet industry that puts out diet after diet and product after diet product while never helping anybody lose weight and keep it off. Choose today to not play the game anymore. Resolve to learn to eat intuitively, to trust your body to tell you when and how much you want to eat. Okay. I'm gonna just check and see. Okay, yeah. A note on this is that this is a gray area for me a little bit. And I think that it's a gray area because it is hard for me to completely reject the diet mentality or be completely anti-diet. And not so much as diet specifically, but just the pursuit of weight loss, which is what they see dieting as, or intentional weight loss, not, natural weight loss. But Sarah and I actually talked about this before, and I do think that it's okay to pursue weight loss if you are feeling like uncomfortable with your body and that's affecting your emotional health or your confidence or whatever it may be, or you have like a specific goal in mind, like someone is here. If you are a CrossFitter or an athlete and you are trying to achieve a certain goal, I understand that there's times that it is, for me, okay to pursue intentional weight loss. I think as long as you're not being too restrictive with it, you're listening to your hunger cues and you're not starving yourself, because those things can lead to binge eating after a diet and can lead to eating disorders in like worst case scenarios. So just some kind of facts or thoughts and points on dieting here. 90 to 95% of all diets fail, and the majority of people that pursue diets will regain it, and long-term diets will regain their lost weight in 1 to 5 years. And that was really crazy to me to see that high of a percentage for long-term weight loss. And like I was saying before, it's normal to feel panicky about letting go of dieting, especially when everyone around you is on some sort of diet. I feel like every time you turn on the TV or you're on social media or, reading anything, you are thrown some sort of diet culture in your face. And so it's really hard to let go of dieting when it's constantly around you. So chronic dieting teaches the body to retain more fat when you start eating again. So after you diet, it wants to retain more fat when you start eating again. Dieting increases metabolism. It triggers the body. Dieting decreases metabolism by triggering the body to become more efficient at utilizing calories by lowering the body's need for energy. And this is a direct quote from Evelyn in the book. She says, biologically, your body experiences the dieting process as a form of starvation. So that's what it recognizes it as. Your cells don't know you are voluntarily restricting your food intake. Your body shifts into primal survival mode, metabolism slows down, and food cravings escalate. And with each diet, the body learns and adapts, resulting in rebound weight gain. Consequently, many of our patients feel like they are a failure, but it is dieting that has failed them. And then kind of what I was talking about before, this kind of hit home with me. It talks about willpower and discipline and how I thought, if I just discipline myself more, if I just had enough willpower, then I would be successful at this. What's wrong with me? Why don't I have the discipline like other people? So I just thought that this was interesting. It says the word discipline derives from the word disciple, obviously. If you are a disciple to your own deep values that have an overriding purpose, it's likely that you will have the will to carry them out. When someone tells us is wrong on one diet and anything with added sugar was wrong on another, it does not engender the same kind of deep beliefs. And so really it's like when you feel really strongly and you fully believe in something, you're more likely to carry those beliefs out. And so when we're told that this is bad for you and not to eat this, or there's contradicting information from one diet says one thing and another diet says another thing, and you're not really sure what's true, it's harder for you to carry something out if you're not completely sure and fully believe that that is bad for you, or that you shouldn't be doing that. Does that make sense? So it's not really a lack of discipline, it's just like not having the full depth of value behind that dieting belief. Does that make sense? I'm assuming yes.
Sorry,
Yes.
you can't see us. Yes, that makes sense. We were just talking about that.
Okay. So two last things. A team of UCLA researchers reviewed 31 long-term studies on dieting and concluded that dieting is a consistent predictor of weight gain. Up to 2/3 of the people regained more weight than they lost. Dieting increases binges and cravings. Both human and rats have been shown to overeat chronic food restriction. Food restriction stimulates the brain to launch a cascade of cravings to eat more, which for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, that always happens. Like whenever I tell myself not to eat something, that's exactly the thing that I want to eat. And when I withhold myself from eating it for so long, then I just want to overeat that thing once I can have it again. So anyways, these are just some kind of quotes and facts and stuff from the book that I felt really kind of showed some of the flaws in dieting. Any questions or thoughts around that?
No.
Okay. This is the dieter's dilemma. So, or like the dieting cycle. And I think a lot of times, I can't think of a time where this didn't happen to me, other than maybe when I was a kid before I even thought about dieting. So it starts with the desire to be thin. I think that this can be not always just a desire to be thin, but just a desire to look a certain way. And we'll dig into more like why we have that desire a little bit later. But it always starts with the desire to change your body in some way. So you go into dieting to, you know, whatever form of dieting that you choose to make that change. And that leads to cravings eventually after the dieting and reduced self-control. Because dieting most of the time is short term, and then in the long term you're going to have some sort of craving. You're going to lose your self-control. I don't know one person that is a perfect dieter and can go forever doing the same diet, and just stick to it completely. And then it goes to a loss of control and overeating or binging, and then it goes back to a regain of lost weight. A lot of time of higher weight gain because your body's trying to store more fat and stuff after it's been restricted. And then you feel bad about that. So you want to go back into, a desire to be thin or desire to change. So you want to go back into dieting. So it's just kind of like a constant cycle. I know that this has happened to me multiple times. I don't know if anybody else, have you ever felt like this is exactly what you fall into or some form of it?
Long time.
Yeah.
Can we get a universal hand raise for every woman in the world? No, I'm just kidding.
I agree. And in the book, it does.
Hand too. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and it talks about in the book that women are tend to be higher sufferers of this than men. Not that it doesn't happen to men, but it's just stats and stuff show that it's higher for women. Okay. So I've had a lot of people say, well, like, I don't really diet. I'm not a dieter. I don't follow a specific diet. But they'll still count their calories or they'll track macros. And I'm not saying that macros is bad. I actually really enjoy doing macro counting. And I think that macro counting can sometimes be a good way to, especially with someone who's hesitating, jumping straight into intuitive eating and completely letting go of dieting. I think macro counting can be a good way to kind of segue into it. Because with macros, you don't really restrict what foods you're consuming. You just try to hit your proteins, your fats, and your carbs for that day, and hit your calories. And so whatever way you do that, it's not a very restrictive diet, but it is a diet. But yeah, I think that going through macros and kind of getting a general sense of like, and a feeling of safety around that for people who are nervous to not diet, of like, this is generally what I should be eating day to day to what I feel like feeds and fuels my body. And then moving into intuitive dieting. So, yeah, so I think, just kind of question yourself, like, am I a dieter? Am I doing unconscious dieting? So eating only safe foods, foods that you deem safe, eating only at a certain time of the day. I have a lot of people tell me that, or I've heard it so many times, like, just make sure you're not eating after this time, or don't eat late at night, or things like that. And
That was definitely
no worries. So our bodies don't punch time clocks. We don't suddenly turn off our need for energy at any certain time, or wanting for food at any certain time. So I think like eating at only certain times of the day is a form of dieting. And I actually found this out today, which I thought was really interesting. Underslept bodies. So if you're having lack of sleep, it reacts a lot like if you were calorie deprived. So your body puts out an increase of ghrelin, or I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's an increase of your hunger hormone and a decrease of leptin, which is your fullness hormone. So your body is telling you to be hungry when you're really just tired. So while I'm saying like, your body doesn't turn off at a certain time, you should be able to eat at 9 o'clock if you need to eat at 9 o'clock. But I do think it's important to kind of check in and be like, am I eating because I'm truly hungry, or am I eating just because I'm tired? And I think that it's hard to tell that. And an easy way to do that is kind of look back, like, when did I eat last? If I haven't eaten in a really long time, it might be a sign that, maybe I am truly hungry. Maybe I'll have something before I go to bed, and then just decide what that something is. We can talk about that more later. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. So it's like your body's literally telling you, like, hey, girl, you're hungry. And you're like, and your body's just really like, no, I'm not really hungry. I'm just tired. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. Another thing is paying penance for eating bad foods. I don't know how many times I felt like I've had to punish myself for eating something bad when I shouldn't. And, I feel like you can do that internally a lot with a lot of negative self-talk or self-motivation to just do better tomorrow. So even if you feel like you're not really following a certain diet, that's one sign of that you're doing like pseudo dieting. And then cutting back on certain foods is another way. Any questions or thoughts? Okay.
I think, sorry, I'm trying to figure out the spacebar thing. I think that's helpful, Caitlin, because I think the thing for me is like, what does dieting mean? Like, it's almost like a philosophical question in some ways. Like you mentioned earlier that it's sort of a gray area.
Mm-hmm.
So it's helpful to kind of like look at it like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I feel sorry, Jessica here. The like lack of sleep and being hungry, I definitely like went through a phase of that in college where like I wasn't sleeping and then I was extra hungry, and then since I wasn't sleeping, I don't work out, so then I started gaining weight. But then there was also the lack of sleep and no this and no that. So I think like lack of sleep can also like really play into a different type of cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely empathize with that too. Like when I haven't slept very much, like I eat significantly more during the day. Like I realized that about myself at one point.
Yeah. I actually had it last night because I was up till like 3 a.m. last night. And I was like, thinking that I was hungry. And I was just like, I don't know if I'm really hungry. Maybe I'm just tired, And so I just like got myself a little piece of chocolate and I went to bed, and like I didn't wake up this morning feeling like deprived, or because I think a lot of times when we put a time limit on eating at a certain time of night, you can overeat in the mornings because you wake up kind of knowing and mentally being like, well, I didn't eat last night after this time, good for me, so now I can eat a bigger breakfast or whatever, or you're feeling a little bit more hungry that morning than you would normally if you just had a little something to eat before you went to bed or after that certain time. So, it doesn't have to be like a whole full meal. I think just go ahead and let yourself have something. Don't put that rule or restriction. And so in the morning you can wake up and not have that deprivation feeling. So yeah. Okay. Going on. The second principle is honor your hunger. Keep your body biologically fed. Eat when you are physically hungry every time. And another side of this is stop when you're physically full. So I struggle with stopping when I'm physically full all the time. And I think that it's really hard to tell when you're physically full, or especially when the food that you're eating is really good. And I think that we'll talk about this more later, but a good way to make sure, it says right here, an easy way to stop overeating when you truly know you'll be able to eat. No, that's not what I want to say. You're supposed to take little breaks when you're eating, to take little pause or timeouts. I don't know how many times I can like sit there and be distracted by a TV show or conversation with friends, and then you're just kind of like in this eating zone, and then you look up and you're like, oh my gosh, I just consumed like all of this food. I don't even really want all of that food. I'm, super over full now or whatever. So taking little breaks, like being super hyper conscious, like it says in that first stage. It'll like be really weird at first to take a time out on your eating, but after a while, it happens naturally when you're better at noticing your hunger cues and realizing when you're physically hungry. But yeah, just taking a break and stepping back and be like, how do I feel? Am I full? Like, do I need to keep eating? Stuff like that. So we'll talk about that more a little bit. But eating is so important that the nerve cells of appetite are located in the hypothalamus region of the brain, which I thought was kind of a cool fact. What many people believe to be an issue of willpower is instead a biological drive. The neurochemicals from the brain coordinate our eating behavior with our body's biological need. So, the hunger is coming from the brain. Basically, that's what that's trying to say. It is much easier to stop eating when you truly know you will be able to eat again. So, no, stopping when you're physically full is a lot easier when you know I can eat this again. Truly, I can eat this again whenever I need to or whenever I want to. Whereas if you feel like, today's my cheat day, tomorrow I have to go back to dieting, you're going to probably be like, I need to get as much of this in as possible, and are more likely you're going to overeat than stopping when you're physically full, because it's going to be a while before you eat that whatever again. So I like that knowing when you truly know you will be able to eat again. So truly giving yourself the ability to eat that thing at any time again. If you've been silencing your hunger for a while, it will take some time to know when you are truly hungry. So like I was talking about, it takes a while to get back to your internal cues. So just doing some timeouts during your eating to kind of just check in, being hyper conscious while you're eating. So being a little bit more attentive. They say in the book to not like eat while you're watching TV or, stuff, making sure you don't have distractions while you're eating, but like, especially at first, but I think that that's a little silly and like unrealistic to apply in real life. At least for me, it is. Any questions or thoughts there? That's all I had on that, on honoring your hunger. Okay. Making peace with food. Start eating what you want. Eliminate the concept of good foods and bad foods. Eat what will be satisfying and will make you feel good. Bring back all the foods you've eliminated from your life because somebody somewhere at some point said you shouldn't eat them because they had too many calories or too many carbs, too many points, too much fat, or they weren't good for you. The more you restrict the foods you really would prefer to eat, the more you are eventually going to binge on those same foods and other foods. So yeah, just making peace with food, I think for me was like exploring all of the foods that I told myself I couldn't have again. And sorry, I keep going back and forth. I want to make sure that I get my notes in. I'll go ahead and go to the slide. But yeah, so just one thing that I like, for whatever reason, was holding on to a memory. Like a lot of times you'll idolize a food when you're dieting and put a lot of like power behind this food essentially because it's something that you can't have. And so you're like, if only I could eat this again, or I can't wait till I can eat this again, or I'm eating this chicken and rice or whatever it is, but I really want to be eating this. And you put all this power and this like value behind this food. But when you make peace with food and you allow yourself to explore those foods again or have those foods again, sometimes those foods can lose their power. And one of the things that for me, for whatever reason, I remember like the Hostess cupcakes from the gas stations were just like a really yummy kind of like junk play food that I could eat as a kid, but we didn't eat out a lot when I was a kid. And so while I was dieting, one of the more recent times, that was one of the things that I was like, ooh, those are so good. Like, I remember those from my childhood and blah, blah, blah. And I just kept thinking about this food, craving it, thinking about it. And then when I got into intuitive eating, I went to the gas station. I was like, I'm just going to get some. And so I got some and I tried it and I was like, this is actually really gross. Like, I have no idea why I liked this as a kid, like why this is disgusting. And I'm not saying that everybody's going to feel that way. Maybe you like Hostess cupcakes. But for me, it just lost its power and I ate it and then I was like, bleh, and then I moved on. So that can happen too, like, for whatever, you're idolizing, whatever you're kind of thinking of, you were wanting to eat. Like there's a story in the book of this lady that was like, would over or binge eat sheet cakes, like birthday sheet cakes. And it was from when she was a kid, her mom wouldn't let her eat the sheet cake because her mom instilled in her that you'll get fat if you eat the cake. So every birthday party she went to, she wasn't allowed to eat the sheet cake and the birthday cake. And so as a kid, she would just like look at it as this like thing that she just like idolized and wanted to eat. And she continued that habit as an adult. And so, or that mindset as an adult. And so when she finally let herself explore the birthday cake from like the regular old plain sheet cake from the grocery store, like nothing special, not saying that they aren't good, but she found that they weren't that great. And she did a period of like binge eating the sheet cake and she got sick of it. She realized it wasn't that good and it lost its power and she was able to move on after that. So anyways, some stories about making peace with food. Cravings run rampant as soon as we're restricted from any kind of substance. Each impending diet brings with it more fear of deprivation. With the knowledge that you won't get enough or get what you want, then comes more overeating, loss of self-control, and finally erosion of self-esteem. So that kind of goes into the diet cycling, like I was talking about earlier. Like, to me, when I would break my diet and eat a craving, I would punish myself and feel bad about it. And then it would reflect, I have a lot of negative self-talk and affect my self-esteem. I don't know if that's happened to anybody else. I'm guessing that it has. I don't know how many times, like, I've told myself, like, you can do better. Like, why aren't you doing better? Like, X, Y, and Z person. So it can really affect your self-esteem too. Once you allow yourself to complete a particular food-freeing phase, you can find that you can stop craving that food. That doesn't mean that you're never going to want to eat that food again, or you're not going to be in the mood for, let's say, pizza, but it just calms that overwhelming craving or that idolization of that food. Removing deprivation and eating diminishes the alluring quality of food and instead puts them in a reasonable, rational perspective. Okay. So what we were talking about earlier, like some of the fears that people have with not dieting, this kind of touches on it. And this is a lot of the questions that I had towards some dietitians when I was pursuing and exploring intuitive eating. And a lot of what people say to me, like, oh, if I didn't diet, then I wouldn't stop eating. Or if I didn't diet, then I would be 500 pounds, and all of these kind of statements. So this is just kind of some of the common fears that hold you back from pursuing intuitive eating. I won't stop eating. So habituation is when people tire of eating the same kind of food. I put good. That's supposed to say food. When you know the food will be there and allowed day after day, it doesn't become so important to have it and it loses its power. So when you're fearing that you're just going to continuously eat and eat and eat, we touched on this a lot in the last slide, but habituation means that, habituation means that you're going to eventually tire of eating that same kind of food. And this can happen in diets too. Like, I don't know how many times like people get tired of eating the same things over and over again in a diet, and that's sometimes can be a reason why dieting doesn't work, because there's not enough variety in the diet and in the foods. So I don't think that you're going to like never stop eating. Eventually, once you go through the exploration phase, there's not a certain time period or time frame around it, but I guarantee that you're going to eventually get to a point where you're like getting sick off of food or over full or sick of eating certain things, and they lose their power. So that kind of calms that fear. Pseudo permission, I've tried it before. Like I've tried the whole not dieting thing before. The foods were never really, this could mean that the foods were never really unconditionally allowed. So you gave yourself like fake permission to eat those foods, or you were kind of like fake non-dieting, but there was always like a voice in the back of your head telling you like, well, but you really shouldn't eat that. Self-fulfilling prophecy. Sometimes just the thought that you will overeat is enough to actually make you overeat. If you tell yourself like, if I eat pizza, then I'm going to eat the whole thing. And sometimes that can be a self-fulfilling prophecy that when you order the pizza that you're just going to go ahead and eat the whole thing. So that's one fear. I won't eat healthfully. So the majority of people, after going through the peace process of making peace with your food, they end up balancing their intake to include mostly nutritious foods with a smattering of play foods. So like I said, eventually you think you're just going to eat burgers, pizza, ice cream the whole time, but I guarantee that you're going to end up wanting to eat a salad or have a more nutritious, balanced meal the majority of the time. Lack of self-trust. The process of giving yourself permission to eat is actually the stepping stone to rebuilding your trust with rebuilding your trust with food and yourself. So you'll get to a point where you'll trust yourself again to eat intuitively and handle all of these fears. And then just like a little note here, avoid the perception trap. I hear this all the time. Well, intuitive eating, doesn't that just mean like you can eat whatever you want, whenever you want, and whenever you feel like it? Like, that's not what this is. That's, not the point of intuitive eating. You generally want to, or you don't generally, you want to pursue healthy eating habits. And that's not going to be eating whatever you want, whenever you want, as much as you want. I think that there is going to be kind of a phase when you're making peace with your food where you are doing that, but it's supposed to level out after you work through the principles, you go through the stages. So does that make sense? Like, you're not supposed to continue just doing whatever you want, whenever you want, all the time. And that's not what intuitive eating is about. They really encourage healthy foods, healthy habits, and eating mostly nutrient-dense foods.
Yeah, can I chime in just for like a minute on this one, or 30 seconds?
Yeah.
This one is, I think that whole slide speaks a lot to my own experience with intuitive eating. Because like Kate, I was in this really like short-term relationship with food where like I restricted and then really craved it and ate it. And that was like how I decided whether I wanted something or not, was based on its like this allure of it. But as I got into intuitive eating, I started moving away from like looking at food through that short-term lens, and kind of expanded my understanding of food into like not just how does it make me feel in the moment, but how does it make me feel emotionally and physically later. So if I ate a food and it was like, if I ate like 3 cupcakes and in the moment it was really good, but afterwards I've had like a sugar headache and like was beating myself up and like restricting for the next 12 hours or something, I started to include that in the way that I understood cupcakes to me. Was like, they're not only like, they're not morally bad, but the way that they affect me isn't necessarily the goal that I'm going after. And expanding my understanding of food helped me like made some of these fears not really factor in. Because I can look at some foods and say, like, you know, is this what I want to do for myself, both now and over the course of the day or the week or whatever?
Yeah.
Will this serve me well? Anyway, okay, sorry.
Right. No, and that's good. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Sarah, because that is another part of the like I won't stop eating. And some of the fears that I had was like, well, I feel like I'm always going to want pizza, or I'm always going to want to eat ice cream every single day, you know, whatever. And you can, and you know, maybe that's true that you're never going to stop wanting that food, but like Sarah was saying, when I would eat that food, part of being mindful about what you're eating and paying attention to your hunger cues and your internal cues is like, when I eat that food, I feel this way. And I don't like the way that I feel when I eat that food. So you start associating, and Sarah and I were, you know, you were telling me about this, start associating different thoughts around certain foods. Like, whereas, you know, you can always see pizza as super happy, positive thoughts around pizza, but also start associating like, yeah, but I also feel, you know, bloated, or like I can't, like when I eat that before I try to work out, I have heartburn or whatever. So like just listening to those internal cues and really being hyper conscious about what you're eating and when you're eating at the beginning, and then it just will kind of happen naturally over time. And I think there's going to be times where you have to like kind of check back in and be more hyper conscious and force yourself to take breaks and like really think about the foods that you're eating. But yeah, I think that what goes into intuitive eating is also like what serves me best for this time with this meal that I'm going to eat. If I, you know, am preparing for a competition, you know, can I eat pizza? Yeah. Is it okay to eat pizza? Yes. But is that really going to serve my body and help me perform to the best of my ability during that competition? Probably not. Like, let me check back in and let's find some foods that I still really enjoy and will meet my satiety levels, so that I'm not feeling deprived, but will also fuel me better and not make me feel bloated or tired or whatever for that competition. Make sense? Thanks, Sarah, for jumping in. Okay, sorry guys. I know this is a little bit long, but we're getting through it. I won't spend a lot of time on this one. Challenge the food police. So the food police is the voice in your head that tells you that you were good for eating a certain way and bad for eating another way. The food police monitors the collection of rules that you have created as you've gone on and off diets. As soon as you'd like to enjoy a piece of birthday cake or reach for a cookie, you'll hear the food police spit out negative comments, hopeless indictments, and guilt-provoking criticisms. Accept that there's no morality tied to nourishing your body a certain way or to enjoying the taste of food. You are not good if you stay on a diet or bad if you fall off. You are not better when you weight loss, like when you lose weight, or worse when you are heavier. The food police might try and tell you otherwise, but your weight, shape, and the way you eat are not in any way a reflection of your worth as a person. Can I just say that again? Your weight, shape, and the way you eat are not in any way is not a reflection of your worth as a person. Like, I don't know how long that I felt like the way that I ate, if I was doing well on a diet, that meant that I was good and that I was like, you know, a good athlete, a good CrossFitter. I was a good example to certain people, you know, I'm disciplined, I'm this, I'm that. And then if I didn't, or if I fell off the diet or I gained weight, then that was bad. And just so much negative self-talk and negative association around immorality put on something that morality should not be around. So, and Sarah told me this before I pursued intuitive eating. She said, you know, I'm sure you've heard her say it too, like, well, I don't think foods are good or bad. And she didn't really dig into it too much, but that kind of sat with me and I was like, what does that mean? You know, because how many times people are you like, I was really bad today, I ate this, you know, or I was really good today, I ate all of this. And a lot of times when you put good or bad or something, you're already putting morality on it. And so many feelings come attached with that morality that affect your self-worth. And a lot of times when you say, well, I was really good today, or I was really good yesterday, I can be bad today, you know? So it can cause you to go into some overeating and be like, well, I'm going to be bad and have this because I was good all day, you know? Whereas if you just take the morality and there's no good or bad foods and you just eat, you know, and have the freedom to let yourself eat a variety of different foods, then it's freeing, you know? So yeah, the food police, I know it sounds super cheesy and dumb, but essentially it's just the voice in the back of your head that's telling you what's good and what's bad to eat. Any questions or thoughts around that? Does that resonate with y'all to know that there's no good or bad foods? And can you think of how many times that you guys have said that and labeled something as good or bad, or your behavior in eating as good or bad? That's okay. You don't have to.
No, I can totally agree with you, Caitlin. I think everything that you're saying is actually just something that I think we don't talk about enough, with just how we process our relationship with food. So it's all good. Yeah, I relate to it very closely. So it's good.
Awesome.
And just it's getting close to 8, but I just wanted to say one thing quickly on that note, because it reminded me, because we're speaking to a group of people that work out. A lot of these principles can carry over, or a lot of these things can carry over into the way that we look at exercise as a way to make up for being bad with food and those sorts of things. So you can kind of get into this cycle. Yeah. So I think there's like this rewarding yourself, punishing yourself, being good, being bad sort of thing that can go hand in hand with the gym as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Noah, are we going to be cut off at 8, or am I able to keep talking for the people that can stay on?
No, you're not gonna. I'll keep it recording. We can go.
Okay.
We can keep going. I was gonna say, I remember Melissa Hartwig used to talk about this, like before she wrote Whole30, where she would talk about foods as not inherently good or bad, and just as like there are foods that are like more. I think she would say something like nutrient dense versus like nutrient. I don't remember what the other word was, and that was the way that she would talk about it. So like you know when you're eating something that is like sort of more something that is going to support, especially from an active lifestyle, that will support that lifestyle more. And she would call that like more nutrient dense or more like nutritious. And then she would say there are other foods that are going to be less supportive of that, and that is less nutritious. That doesn't mean that they're better, worse, or whatever for most of life, or that you aren't going to eat stuff that features both of those things, but that the like sort of morality around it or value judgment based on it that's like a human construct, not a biological construct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think for me, the part that stands out the most is that your worth isn't defined by whether or not you're heavier or less heavy, or your weight, or what you're eating. And if, I think it's unfortunately becomes more common with women, but because of like what society tells us defines our worth, of whether or not we have perfect eyebrows, or if we weigh a certain amount, or what our BMI is, or whatever, then when you can take it off of you're valued, even if you're not the weight that society wants you to be at, then you're also worth, your body is worth filling it with nutrient dense foods, and that your body is worth the the best type of way to honor your body. And like once you accept the fact that your body is worth everything regardless of its weight, then you can nourish it the way that your body deserves, just as much as the person who might be standing next to you that might be socially at a better weight or what have you. You deserve it just as much as somebody else.
Yeah, and a lot of times you can find somebody, and we'll talk about this in the respect your body portion, but someone next to you could eat, what you consider all the bad foods and look societally acceptable, and then you over here could be dieting constantly and eating the good foods and still struggle with weight gain. So I think taking your self-worth out of that is crucial. Thanks, guys, for sharing. Okay, we're going to get through this. Feel your fullness. Listen to the physical signals that tell you that you have had enough. Listen for the signs your body sends you when it's satisfied, approaching fullness and full, and make your decision whether to stop eating, considering this feedback. So we talked about this a little bit before, so I'm not going to say a lot, but I will say that there is a satiety factor into your fullness, and that it's important to continue to explore and find new foods that satisfy you, so you can have a wide variety. You can just have like a larger selection to choose from for your eating habits. But so I could eat a plain salad with chicken on top of it, and if I'm not satisfied by that salad and I'm really wanting something else, you're not going to feel your fullness because your satiety is not met. And so afterwards, you will crave or still feel like you're hungry and need to eat something else that's going to make you feel full and satisfied. So just when you're paying attention to feeling your fullness, just note the satiety in the meal that you're eating too. So sometimes you kind of just like have to grin and bear with it, right? Like if you've packed your lunch, that's what you're eating, it is. But the majority of the time you should be trying to pursue satiety and satisfaction in high satiety level and satisfaction in your meals. And that'll help you feel full and won't want to eat as much. Okay. Discover the satisfaction factor. Eat what you love. When you let yourself eat what you want, the pleasure you derive will help you feel like you've had enough sooner than if you eat what you think you should or eat or supposed to eat. Start by asking yourself what you really like to eat, not what you should eat. Set the table, put out the good china, turn off distractions, which I don't 100% agree with. Make your meals special occasions. Focus on the taste and texture and what you are eating. Enjoy your food and the whole experience of eating. So this just kind of goes over what I said. When trying to fill the void created by denying the satisfaction factor meal from a meal, you can chase a phantom food. Like I said, after you eat something that maybe isn't super satisfying, you're just kind of like, what am I really wanting? I don't know how many times that you've done this, but I'll be like, I just ate that, but I'm wanting something else. And you're chasing this phantom food of what's going to satisfy you. So if you have more satisfaction in your meal, you're not going to chase that phantom food. And then Americans have gotten so focused on the alchemy of foods that we have neglected to the provision of pleasure. So we're so focused on like, this contains carbs, proteins, fat, or has this many calories or this many X, Y, and Z, that we forget to focus on, the texture, the taste, the feel, the pleasure of eating that food. And we've, just kind of gotten away from the focus. And I think that other countries really have a better focus on the pleasure of foods. And they really take the time to eat a slow like dinner or whatever it is and really enjoy that food or that meal. For some, any experience that smacks of pleasure trigger feelings of guilt and wrongdoing. So, it is kind of guilt-provoking when you eat something, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm really enjoying this ice cream, but that makes me feel bad because this is a bad food. And that's not how it should be. We should be able to enjoy the ice cream and eat it without guilt, or feeling like we're doing something wrong, and adding that morality to it. So, just take the morality off of it. And if you're making the choice to eat pizza or whatever it is at that time, allow yourself to really enjoy it, and it'll help your satisfaction factor. Cope with your emotions without using food. Blech. This one is hard for me. Do you use food to cope with life? Anxiety, sadness, loneliness, boredom, worry, and anger are feelings every human experiences. Although food may comfort you momentarily, distract you temporarily from your pain, help you zone out for a second, or even numb you completely, food won't solve the problems that drive you to eat or abolish any of your negative feelings. If anything, eating for emotional hunger instead of physical hunger will only make you feel worse. When you are finished eating, you will still have to deal with the issues that drove you to eat, as well as guilt and other emotions you have about eating. So, this is difficult for me, and I think probably a lot of people right now are wanting to emotional eat. I mean, on our Ladies of Lumos chat, I know that there's been a lot of talk of that. We're eating our emotions, we're eating our feelings, we're eating our boredom. And that comes pretty natural, I think, to us as humans, is wanting to do that, and especially when we're at our house constantly and the food is just constantly there. And while I don't think it's inherently bad to go through this process or go through that experience of emotional eating, I just think that it's not going to help you in the long run, and it's better to find other ways to process those feelings than using food as a crutch. So I'm not saying like if you emotionally eat, that's really bad. Again, putting morality on it, but just know that if you emotionally eat, great. Emotionally eat, okay. Recognize it, think about it, and then move on. Don't put so much pressure or power behind it, and just, give yourself grace and patience, especially at this time. You might be emotionally eating or boredom eating a lot more than you would normally. So, but just know that there are other tools and other ways, and the book has a lot of different, coping mechanisms. I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I think your therapist will give you a lot of tools to process through these emotions and stuff, or these feelings, without using food as a crutch. So yeah, like I said, occasionally eating comfort foods can be part of a healthy relationship with food. Like when you associate a certain comfort food with, maybe in childhood, your mom gave you chicken noodle soup. Or maybe she still does, like my mom still does. But, you associate chicken noodle soup with when you feel sick, or when you're feeling, sad, or like, you went through a breakup. And so like you want to eat all of these comfort foods. I think it can be part of a healthy relationship with food when you explore those things. But at the same time, you have to stay in touch with your satiety levels and do it without feeling guilt, and then not giving a lot of power behind it, and moving on.
I want to chime in on this one, because this one was one of my biggest pieces of getting like really feeling like I was intuitively eating. So one of my triggers that I figured out with my therapist, I went to an eating specific therapist. Like 4 years ago, we discovered that when I felt, this is going to get personal, but when I felt trapped, that was one of my eating was how I coped with that. So if you can imagine in quarantine, that's just all the time. So I'm like constantly being triggered. I'm 4 years into this journey, but even the first couple of weeks for me were really triggering and really hard. And, maybe before quarantine, as my therapist used to say, eating no longer served me. So it was the coping tool I used as a kid. And as I got older, I expanded my toolbox. And then all of a sudden I find myself in this bizarre situation of quarantine, and eating for the first couple of weeks was the only tool I felt like I had. And so I let myself deal with it and eat, and I was gentle with myself, and I was able to come out of it with, with my head still on. So it's not like I intuitively ate and I like never looked back at my coping mechanisms of binging or restricting. But I was able to recognize it, able to see the purpose it was serving, and then kind of deal with it after 4 years. So it's like a process, but
yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, respect your body. And I really love this chapter in the book. If you struggle at all with negative self-body image, this chapter is just really great. But your body is unique as you are. Nobody on earth is exactly like you, and nobody on earth is exactly like nobody's body on earth is exactly like yours. Respecting your body starts with recognizing all that your body's done for you and put up with from you. Stop abusing your body with diets, tight clothes, militant exercise, and other self-punishments. Treat your body with dignity. Feed it when it is hungry, rest it when it is tired, dress it in comfortable clothes, and move gently. And that sounds all like kind of like, well, duh. But in this, is coming from a woman's perspective. But I think it's really hard for us to know that our body, the way that it is okay and is enough and is loved and is beautiful and, all of these things. And a lot of intuitive eating goes into respecting that body. And it has to start with stopping the negative self-talk. It's really, really hard to do that. And it's really hard to do this principle to respect your body when there's constant images around you of what society puts out, and it's getting a lot better now, right? But there's so much out there still and has been drilled into our brains for so long of what a particular image is for a woman to be and a man to be healthy and beautiful and accepted. And so, it's hard to respect your body and treat it in a way that you know that you should when you have all of that around you. And it just starts with stopping the negative self-talk. And something in the book that I thought was funny that they even brought up, but it was like, when was the last time you bought yourself new underwear? And at that time for me, I was still wearing underwear that fit my older body. And at that point, or younger body, sorry, not older body, but body previously. And I kept, not wanting to buy new underwear for my body where it was at currently, because I just kept thinking, well, I'll eventually get back to the way I looked. I'll eventually get back to this. If I just diet, if I just get, more disciplined, if I just do this or do that, I'll eventually get back there. And not just underwear. They just called out underwear, which I thought was funny in the book, but any clothes, like buy clothes that fit your body today. Don't hold off on buying clothes just because you feel like, well, I'm going to wait until I lose 10 pounds to buy whatever. I can't tell you how good it feels, and I'm sure you feel the same way, but it feels so good to put on a piece of clothing and it fits right and it fits your current body and it doesn't make you feel like, oh, this is a little tight. I feel like I have love handles squishing out at the top. And so when you're wearing that in a social setting, that's what you're focusing on the whole time. Or putting on something that's tight and like 2 years ago it fit just fine, so you immediately start having negative self-talk and be like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe these don't fit me anymore, oh my, and all of this stuff. So I actually bought myself new underwear after I read this chapter, and it just felt really great. Like that's like the basics of your attire. It's the foundation of your attire, and it should be something that fits and that feels comfortable. And that sounds kind of like, duh, stupid, but I was not doing that. So, just that's part of it. And I kind of encourage you to, or don't kind of, but I encourage you to go out and buy underwear if you're wearing underwear that's, too small or uncomfortable for you, or maybe it's too big. So yeah, let me just check and see if I have any notes on this really quick. Okay.
This one for me, I mean, I grew up as a gym rat. I've been in a gym, pretty consistently since I was in, I don't know, 7th grade. And so getting out of like the slipstream of being a comparer, being somebody who spent more time looking at other people and wondering why I didn't look like them was, I think took a real long time. And then especially some of the stuff about sort of like resting your body when it's tired or moving your body gently at times, I think has become something in the last couple of years for me that I think more related to, what we do kind of fitness wise has been something where sometimes the pursuit of goals or something becomes counterproductive to the goals themselves, and to realize that like making my body feel better by kind of giving it what it needs and not worrying that what I need, especially, where I am age wise or injury wise or whatever versus where somebody else is sort of like my own personal sort of uniqueness and not necessarily something that's, a kind of something to run from.
Yeah.
Can I also say something about the whole respect your body thing?
Yes.
It was Anna who said this a few months ago when she was talking about her legs, and hearing her talk about her struggles, and freaking, to me, I was like, what? Like, not you. But she actually has it on her Instagram where she talks about, yeah, I have these insecurities and these things are, on my legs or whatever. She said, and I think she was doing pistol squats. She's like, but look at what my body can do. And like she was busting out pistol squats, I think is what it was, or something. And I think that also goes into loving ourselves and respecting ourselves in the body that you're saying that we have, because it's like, yeah, we may not be perfect and we may be comparing ourselves to everybody else, but at the same time, we're showing up, we're doing what we can at the gym. And, that kind of just goes into, yeah, but look what I can do.
Yeah.
I can, squat 185 or whatever, and that's kind of what Anna was speaking about, was just kind of like, yeah, I may not have the perfect body, but look at what my body, can do for me. And it's staying strong and it's staying healthy. And that kind of this is what it took me to. Just kind of hearing that just took me back to what Anna was talking about. And it really, that set in with me, because that's where I struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. Yeah, I think sometimes I think to myself, if my body could talk, it'd probably be like, what the heck are you putting me through? Like, do I not do enough for you? Look at what I do for you every single day. I function and you breathe and I do all these things for you. And, like, you're treating me this way, or you're telling yourself or being hard on yourself about this, but you just did, squats at this weight yesterday. And, I'm your body. I did that for you. So just being kind to your body and thanking your body too, which sounds really silly, but you don't have to like physically be like, thank you, body, but, or you could, but just, having gratitude to towards your body and like thanking it for what it is capable of doing. So yeah, I love that. Thank you. So just get through a couple of points I wanted to touch on for respecting your body. And I love this little cactus image, no wrong way to have a body. I think it's super cute. Studies have shown the more you focus on your body, the worse you feel about yourself. Many fear that if they accept their current body size, it would mean complacency, giving up, and getting even bigger. If you're meant to get to your natural ideal weight, you need to loosen up on yourself, put weight loss on the back burner, and treat your body with respect. So no, I think that kind of touches on what you're talking about a little bit. Like, put some of the preconceived notions of what you should be focusing on the back burner, and just treat your body with respect, be in tune with it, and give it what it needs where it is currently at. And, your body will perform so much better, or you will feel so much better. It's easy to keep delaying good things for yourself, waiting until you have that body you think is more deserving. So I kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. We are not saying disregard your body. We are urging you instead to respect and appreciating it. Respecting your body means taking care of your health, and we'll talk a little bit about how do you respect your body in a little bit. But health at every size. So health doesn't have one particular look. It isn't one particular way. When you feel loathsome towards your body, you struggle with an intense desire to diet and just get the weight off. Your healthy natural weight may not match what you have in mind. So with intuitive eating, when you go through the stages and you become a natural intuitive eater and you're feeding and eating intuitively, then your body is going to level out, or it's supposed to level out at its genetic, biological, natural weight that you are born to have. And sometimes that may not match what you have in mind or what you feel like society says that you should look, or the way that society says you should look. And so learning to be okay with that, put a lot of I've recently in the past year or so, and if you know me, if you've been close to me during this time, you know that I've struggled with it a lot and I get on the fence about it a lot, but just a lot of focus on positive body image and not focusing on what society is telling you that you have to look. So it is kind of, I feel like in my mind, it was kind of like a catch almost with intuitive eating. It's like, because intuitive eating is not promising you weight loss. The majority of the people that pursue it, especially if they're overweight when they start intuitive eating, do see weight loss, but that is not the goal and it is not the sole focus of intuitive eating. So I think that learning to be okay with the body that you were given and knowing that this is kind of natural and this is how I am, and just learning to love your body wherever it's at that point in time, which is really, really, really hard. And like I said earlier, like I also think that if you are trying to get your body in a certain shape for a competition, you're a professional athlete, things like that, I think that there's lots of ways, lots of gray areas with this around the intuitive eating your natural weight. And I do think it's okay to, if you were just like unhappy, Sarah and I talked about this, like I just feel heavy of my current weight and I feel like it's affecting me in certain ways. Some of that may be like, you need to check back in. Are you really truly intuitively eating? And I am not, when I had that conversation with Sarah, I was like, I'm overeating at every meal. I'm constantly eating certain foods that I know make me feel certain ways, but I do it anyways. I'm not mixing in a good amount of healthy, nutrient-dense foods. And I just wasn't intuitively eating. So sometimes you need to take a step back and be like, well, am I really intuitively eating and feeding my body, mostly nutrient-dense, healthy foods? And if you are and you still aren't happy, then, I think it's okay to figure out a way to pursue weight loss in a healthy, non-restrictive, non-depriving way. So yeah, anyways, moving on. How to respect your body, make it comfortable, and meet its basic needs. Basic premises of body respect. Just telling yourself, and this may seem like common sense, but these are things that your body deserves and needs to function properly. So it deserves to be fed, to be treated with dignity, to be dressed comfortably and in the manner to which I am accustomed, to be touched affectionately and with respect, and to move comfortably. Change your body assessment tools. So I got rid of my scale when I started doing intuitive eating because I felt a lot of negative self-talk with the scale. And there's been so many studies that show that, your scale weight is not a direct reflection of your health. Or get rid of the genes that you measure yourself with. These are the genes that I can fit in when I'm skinny, and I'm working to get back towards these skinny genes. So that's one way you can respect your body. Quit the body check game. How does my body compare to others around me? I think comparison steals joy in so many ways. And I do it all the time. I know many people do it all the time. It's incredibly hard not to compare yourself. But just really focusing on like my body is my DNA, my genetics is just inherently and like just created so differently than anybody else's. It's not fair to compare my body against someone else's. So take that away. Don't compromise for the big event. Wanting to look your best and dieting down for a special occasion. Like, well, I'm just going to diet during this time so that I can look really good for this wedding. I want to fit into this dress for this wedding, or I want to fit into these size pants again for a high school reunion, or whatever it is. Don't compromise your intuitive eating and dieting for a big event. Stop body bashing. Megan or MK is the best about calling you out when you body bash or have any sort of negative self-talk. And I love it. And it's such a great reminder. But I think we are so accustomed and it's so ingrained in us to bash our bodies and to be like, oh, I hate my arms, or oh, I hate this, or I'm never going to have this and I'm never going to look this way. So stop body bashing. It doesn't get you anywhere. Yes.
This is a different take on these, but I think it's important also to know that if you're struggling with these things and these thoughts, that it's very likely that someone next to you is struggling with these thoughts. And so we're kind of all in this together. So when you bash your body, if someone hears you, it reinforces those same things. And I also tell people, like, even if you think someone looks really good, if you comment on their body, you don't know what they've been doing to get there, and it can reinforce those same things. So just generally, like, I think respecting your body is also respecting other people's bodies, and not perpetuating those same things that you feel like are trapping you. That's all.
Yeah.
I would just like to piggyback on that. The reason why I'm so just adamant about positive self-talk is my older sister, my best friend, my champion. She has struggled with eating disorders her whole entire life. And I have been with her through like the hardest points in that, and not understanding from like a personal level what she went through. I got to see it firsthand and how she would speak to herself. And every single time, like, it'd be so frustrating because, you know, her whole entire life she was so thin, and like what society saw as beautiful, like that's what she looked like. And she kept, you know, like being so negative to herself again and again and again and again. And with that type of talk, it's really easy to get frustrated with that person and be like, you need to stop doing this, why can't you, blah blah blah. And every single time she would go on a tangent, I would just hype her up and be positive and be super positive, because getting mad at this person for X, Y, and Z because you can't see like what they're going through mentally isn't going to like make that breakthrough. Like, they're only going to make the breakthrough for themselves when they come to that place of like being positive. And I'm really lucky that my mom did what she did when she was young, when I was young for me. And I know this is long, I'm gonna make this really quick. But when I was young and I looked so different from my sister growing up, I would sob to my mom and cry to her. I'm like, why don't I look like my sister? Like, I should be thinner, right? I should look a certain way. And my mom told me, she was like, Megan, you're still a little girl. Like, you haven't grown into your body yet. And how easy would it have been for her to be like, you know what, it is your fault. You know, you eat macaroni and cheese all the time. You need to stop doing this. But she came from a place of like loving and acceptance. And that's what we need to be for our brothers and sisters, being loving and accepting to them, and just creating that self-talk. Like Sarah said, like not saying anything about their body, but like the person that they are, and disconnecting how they look from who they actually are. Sorry, that was long.
Yeah. No, that was good. Yeah, I do. Thank you, MK and Sarah. But yeah, I think also being in a gym or fitness center can be really triggering to hearing a lot of this talk. So, and I've heard some of this talk in our own gym, and I in no way think that anybody is ever having any sort of malicious intent. But, so I just think it's there's not awareness around it. And sometimes you can just not think about have someone else's, mindset during this time, but respect others around you by being cautious of your diet talk. And you could be projecting onto them, your diet beliefs. And, I've heard before and saying certain things like, well, you could look like this too if you stopped drinking all those beers, or if you just stop drinking in general, or if you do this, so putting a lot of that, and you don't know how that person's going to handle it, and what their eating habits are like. It could be triggering a eating disorder or some sort of a dangerous eating habit. So just being really careful and respectful of the way you talk about dieting, and the importance of it, or like this, putting your self-worth in it and all that stuff around the gym. And then also when you bash yourself, let's say I'm like, oh my gosh, I hate my stomach. Oh, I feel so fat. And then maybe someone around me is like, a different size than me and feels like, well, God, if they feel that way, then I must be really bad, And so feeling worse off if you see someone that you idolize and they're trashing themselves and you're like, oh my God, I wish I could look that way. Like I must be nothing. Like if they're having problems with the way that they look, or they think that the way they look isn't good enough, then I'm definitely not good enough. So yeah, body bashing or yourself can affect others around you too. Okay. Exercise, feel the difference. Exercise because it makes you feel good, not to burn calories or shape your body. Forget extreme exercise, grueling routines, and wasting hours on treadmills going nowhere. Just get active doing activities you love, like walking, biking, hiking, gardening, window shopping, playing with kids, blah, blah, blah. So this did seem a little like, just like do whatever and blah, blah, blah. And I totally think that. Like, Fonz does dance parties right now, and I absolutely love that. And MK was telling us the other day, she was encouraging Jillian and I, when we weren't feeling the workout, just move your body in whatever way that it feels good to move that day. So not putting parameters around what exercise means. And forget extreme exercise, grueling routines. That's like exactly what CrossFit is, in a lot of ways. So I don't really think you should forget that, but I think the main focus here is like, don't see exercise as like a chore, as like, I have to do this. Like Sarah was talking about earlier, this is a form of punishment, or that I, have to do this much of a workout or run these many miles, burn off these many calories because I ate bad yesterday or whatever. So don't exercise to earn your food. Don't say like, oh, well, I'm doing this. And I hear it all the time. Like, I do CrossFit so I can eat this way. Like, I just think like when you have that mentality, you put a sort of like punishment and like reward around food that I think can be turned into unhealthy eating habits, and a lot of negativity around like, well, like I didn't exercise today, I really shouldn't be eating this. I don't deserve to eat this because I haven't worked out in however long, or I need to eat this way because whatever. So just I think that takes all of the joy out of exercising and moving your body, and it's a necessity to our health in so many ways. And so we tend to do it less when it becomes a chore and it feels like a punishment. So when we take that away from it, and we take away the parameters that we feel like qualify exercise, then you're able to just move your body and feel good, do different things, explore different stuff, and just keep your body active and healthy in more ways than what you think, or you put it in like a little box as. If your prime focus is on weight loss, it won't motivate you to exercise for long. So so I just think like put the joy back in exercising was the main point of this, and explore different things that make you happy in exercising. And it doesn't have to be just however many hours on the treadmill, however much time's in the gym for CrossFit or whatever. So, yeah. Any thoughts or questions on this before we move on?
Just a thought. I mean, Stephen touched on it when he talked about macros. Your, daily caloric expenditure, exercise only makes up like, what was it, like 10% of your total energy expenditure. So it's really, I mean, if nothing else, like thinking about it from a science perspective, like this 3 hours on a treadmill, like, is that really gonna make that much difference to my like total health or like total the way that I look, essentially?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, MK. Okay, last one. Thanks for hanging in there with me, guys. Honor your health through gentle nutrition. Make food choices that nourish your body while satisfying your taste buds. Honor the health-sustaining properties of whole foods without feeling like you need to only eat healthy foods. Include in your diet those that you love and will make you feel good. So we touched on this a little bit. What is eating healthy? Having a healthy balance of foods and having a healthy relationship with food. That's what they perceive being healthy and eating healthy as. Achieving authentic health is a process of dynamic integration of your inner world and the external world of health guidelines, which include exercise and nutrition. You decide if and what of the external world you'd like to integrate. So that kind of meaning it's a mixture of what you know inherently is good for you, and then also like a mix of like external world health guidelines. But don't let the external world health guidelines completely dictate what you're eating. It needs to be a mixture, and you can choose what you'd like to integrate into your diet, or not into your diet, but into your health, your eating habits. You don't have to eat perfectly to be healthy. Much of what you eat is primarily for your nutritional health, and a small of it is simply for pleasure. So it is okay to eat simply for pleasure, but it shouldn't be the majority of what you're doing. And I think after you make peace with food, you'll find that just kind of comes naturally. So this is kind of the plate method. I'm sure you guys have all seen this before multiple times, but it's referenced in the book, and I just think it's always a good reminder. It's an easy guide to healthy eating. Remind yourself it's not a rigid edict, so it's not like you have to measure this out perfectly on your plate. And if one meal doesn't look like this, that's okay, but this is just a general guideline to help remind you without having to measure or count or weigh stuff out. So grains, starches, meats, proteins, they say in the book it should look kind of like a lopsided peace sign. So yeah, that's all I have, guys. I know that was a lot. I have here in this last slide, I have a link to buy the book on Amazon. I have some resource here from like some of the stats and quotes that I pulled. There is a quiz from the book that I think is really cool. If you want to see if you're an intuitive eater or not currently, you can take that quiz, and I thought it was really cool. I found that I was not an intuitive eater when I took the quiz back when I pursued all this. And then here are a bunch of Instagram accounts to follow. We have a couple of awesome nutritionists that follow the intuitive eating, and this lady is actually a therapist as well. So I thought that was really cool to have a mixture. And then this Cheerfully Nourished is a Houston nutritionist that follows intuitive eating, but she was one of the first people that got me into intuitive eating. So I wanted to make sure I include her. But these are also like body positive accounts and intuitive eating accounts. They're not all of the ones, obviously, but these are just some that I follow and have felt them really helpful. And then as well as with some podcasts here that I felt like are really helpful to, maybe you don't want to buy the book and dig into all of this reading right away, but you kind of are still interested and just want to play around with intuitive eating. I would suggest following some of these Instagram accounts and listening to some of these podcasts and see where it takes you. So, yeah, I want to thank you so much for joining. Sorry it took me so long, but there's just so much information I wanted to give to you guys. I was really excited. If you can't tell, I feel really passionately about it. And I just feel like it was very freeing to me after I started pursuing it. And yeah, when you take out the time in your day that you focus on counting, tracking, weighing, worrying about food, and your weight loss and all of that, like how much more of your day do you have back, and how much more can you pursue and focus your brain and your energy on with when you do intuitive eating and you stop dieting. So
and I'm just gonna wrap up real quick. Sorry, Caitlin. Thank you, Caitlin.
Go for it.
I don't know that I made you do it, but I appreciate that you were willing and eager. So Caitlin and I have talked about intuitive eating. I've been doing intuitive eating for like 4 years. And at Lumos, we offer nutrition foundations. We cover like a whole host of things. Like Caitlin was saying, she did macros. A couple other people, I think maybe they signed off, have done something through Lumos. I will only talk to you about intuitive eating or try to bring you over to our side, the anti-diet side. But if you have more questions, I'm always happy to talk about it. I talk about it all the time. But if you want to like really dig in, we can do like a formal one-on-one nutrition foundations where we kind of like talk about how you can begin this journey, because it really is a journey. Like I said, it took me years and it was bumpy, but I'm in a very good place. And like, that's why I think it's important for someone like Caitlin to share it, because I think it is life-changing and important. So if you want to talk more casually, let me know. But if you want to talk formally, let me know too.
Yeah, and I'm always happy to have more chats and stuff. Or if anybody wants to borrow my intuitive eating book, I'm happy to lend it out to you at this time.
Thanks, Caitlin. That was awesome. I can tell your passion for it and like how much work you put into it, and I really appreciate you doing that. It's awesome.
Yeah, thanks for hanging in there for the whole thing. But yeah, do y'all guys have any questions after all of that? I know it was like a whole bunch of information, but any original thoughts or any open discussion or questions at this time? I know we're like super over, so I'm totally okay if you just want to hop off, but just want to answer any initial questions you may have at this time or discussion.
I just have a general comment. I thought that it was really interesting to learn how this kind of started as more of like a healing practice, you know? Like that was really interesting to hear, and sort of like, you know, I'm in school for counseling right now, and there are just so many like carryovers for like other kind of like emotional well-being kind of frameworks and stuff like that, and I'm really interested in like the overlap between, you know, this kind of stuff and your mental well-being and your emotional well-being and stuff like that. So it's cool to hear, and I'm excited to like dig more into it.
Yeah, thanks, Hillary. I forgot you were doing that. That's what you're, you know, chasing after for school. So yeah, that's really awesome. Okay.
Hey, I'm Noah's mom, and I just want to say thank you. I'm trying to send a message, but it's not working. So
I saw it, Mama.
no, did I do it? Like 3 days?
Yeah, I saw it.
All right, or whatever. It was really good. Really, really. I feel I'm in lockdown, so it's kind of like it's a good head to be in. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. So
All
nice to
right.
meet you.
Be well, everybody. Over
Yeah.
and out. Good night.
Okay.
Bye, Mama.
Bye.
That's so sweet.
She was very excited.
Oh, that's so great. Well, thank you, Sarah, again for encouraging me to talk about this. You probably could have done it, you know, more eloquently, but It was really great for me to, it almost made me read the entire book again, you know, while I was trying to get these slides ready. So it was great to have like a little refresher for me as well. And thanks Noah for the platform to do this. So, you know, love you guys and hope you have a good weekend, and, you know, come at me if you have any other questions or just want to talk about it some.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Kate.
Caitlin.
Bye. Good to see you,
Bye,
Rachel.
guys.
There it is.
Bye. Good to see you.